Welcome, everyone, to How to Prep for College. I'm Janine Phelan with Education Quest, and tonight I'll pick the brains of two Nebraska school counselors so you can walk away with the knowledge you need to make college possible. But first, I want to let our viewers know that we will be giving away either an insulated coffee mug or a water bottle tonight, your choice. So we will put a link in the comments and just simply click on that link to register to win. I'll announce the winner at the end of this presentation, so be sure to stay tuned. Also, post any questions you have in the comments so that we can be sure to address them tonight. With that, let's dig into our content. So welcome to our guest and thank you for participating in this live stream. Please take a moment to introduce yourselves.
I'm Julie Freeberg. I'm the high school counselor at Holdridge High School.
My name is Anders Peterson. I'm a school counselor at Southwest High School here in Lincoln.
Okay, and Julie, can you tell us how many students are in your school, in your high school? How many students do you serve?
We're probably between 325 to 340 students. My senior class this year is about 80 students.
Okay, very good. How about you, Anders?
Yeah, so I think we're over 2,200. We're the second largest school, I think, in Lincoln this year. And so we're at 912. I would say counselors have somewhere in the neighborhood of 350 to 400 per counselor in our graduating classes. It's in the 600s, I know that, but less than 650 or so, I think.
Okay. All right, good to know. So we have a smaller school represented and a very large public high school. So it'll be great to hear from both of you. So before we begin, I just want to make sure everyone knows when I use the term college, I'm referring to any education that's beyond high school. So with that, let's get started. So college and careers go together. So how can you help students explore their interests and skills as it relates to potential careers? Anders, do you want to start us off with how you do that?
You bet. So this is something that we really tried to build into our curriculum at school. We do grade level meetings. So at each grade, we're working with students around a project that really takes the 4 years that we're with them. We follow our students. They maintain the same counselor throughout their 4 years. So we have kids as freshmen. In part of their freshman class meeting, we do some work around some different assessments that kind of give them some ideas of things that they might be interested in based on likes and interests and values, things that are important to them, and then encourage them. We connect those to elective options they have that they can take at school, and generally encourage as part of that lesson that we have kids actually register for a class related to one of the interests that they got, one of the career interests they got from the surveys.
Great. How about you, Julie? How do you help students talk about their interests and skills, how they relate to potential careers?
We do some career exploration activities with our students as well. We try to expose them to as many possibilities, and I think we try to start right here in our own community. And we make sure that we get our students at some local career fairs that are, local development corporation and Central Community College put on for students. And then we also do a junior career day where we take our junior class out to 3 fairly large employers right here in Holdridge, and they can at least have an awareness of the many possibilities for a career at those business places. And one thing we're looking at too is expanding our job shadowing experience next year.
That's fantastic. I know that's a really important thing for students to have that access to job shadowing. Fantastic. So it seems like the next step would be to connect the careers with the required education. So the question is, how do you help students find colleges that provide the education that's required for their desired career. Julie, do you want to start with that, how you do that?
Well, I think there's some other things to ask even ahead of that. And, we're in a rural area. Do any of these students need to be at home or be able to get home? Maybe they're a vital part of a farming operation. So being available to help springtime and harvest could be an important factor for some students. And what kind of education does their field need, and where can we direct them so that they get that best education?
Great.
As far as Lincoln goes, and I would say that, our graduation requirements are pretty well set for four-year college entrance. Generally speaking, kids are getting everything but world language as a requirement to enter or to get out of high school. Obviously, a lot of kids aren't interested in that four-year option, and so by meeting four-year entrance requirements, we're also covering two-year entrance requirements. So I think that piece just sort of like gives them the opportunity to get these credits irrespective of how solid their plan is or how clearly they kind of understand what their options are. But I would absolutely say that some of this stuff that I heard Julie talk about, getting kids access and exposure to local opportunities. We have a junior class that builds in some job shadowing, that has members come from the community and interview students in a mock interview. Kids work on college research as part of that too. So part of that's built into our curriculum. A lot of that's also part of grade level meetings. And then a lot of that is just, the extent to which students are interested. I love working with kids who are curious and want to know what is out there for them. And part of that process becomes, what are the other criteria? What do you need to be close to home? Like Julie mentioned, is it, I want to be a day's drive? But generally speaking, covering those core requirements and then experimenting with electives, I would say, is hopefully how most kids get some concept of what career they might pursue once they get to college.
Fantastic. So what about those students who have no idea what they want to study in college? They have no idea what careers to explore. What advice do you give to them? Who would like to take that one first?
We don't have any of those. Julie, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, of course. I think for that student that knows that they want to go to college and they don't know what they want to do, just getting there is the first step. And in that regard, just visiting a campus. I think that's so important, to visit a campus or multiple campuses, of course, and just get exposure to what's available there. And, meet people, talk to people, do a job shadow, do several job shadows. And maybe even if you don't enjoy what you're doing, or, working a job, you'll find out that you don't like that. Or I just getting out into the world and seeing some things, I think is very valuable.
So Anders, what if there was one student at your school that didn't know what they wanted to be?
if we ever got one of those,
right.
I do that's why we really encourage that it's a 4-year graduation plan, and the kids are like part of this document that we have them begin working on as freshmen, has them identify their yearly career cluster, kind of the one that they feel like they're most interested in based on classes they've taken, assessments that we've done. And the impetus there is then always, right, to try a class or try classes related to the interest area that you've arrived at, kind of based on this work that we're doing. So for some kids, that's, I think it's always experimentation, which I think can be hard sometimes. I think kids can be pretty focused on what they have to do and aren't necessarily always thinking about how things could relate to career down the road. And even like part-time jobs, having some concept of what things you do and don't like at a part-time job can give us a better concept of what kind of career options might be better. Customer service, right, is something a lot of kids are going to do in a high school type job. You can do that, and clearly you can do that at the college level with an advanced degree. But if that's not something that you enjoy, or it's not something you find yourself, particularly given to, then using that information, even if it's negative input, even if it tells you, heck, you don't want to do this thing for a living, that's still great. And we want kids to have the experience to decide. It's much more important that they try than that they get it right. And so a lot of it is encouraging kids to try and fail, look for opportunities in their lives, certainly in school, in their families, within their professional networks, to kind of see what's out there. And then really just kind of try to connect those things to classes so they can try them at school and kind of build from there.
I love that. I think we can all relate to jobs we've had in the past that weren't really a great fit. And I've heard the saying, fail fast, get out, find something different. So great advice. So moving on, how do you direct students to explore colleges? What resources do you recommend for your students to actually look at colleges? Andrews, do you want to start with that?
Well, I mean, we're obviously really fortunate in Nebraska to have Education Quest. I don't think that there's a better resource. I mean, locally, there's clearly there's nothing that comes close. I think that I mean, there's just the tools that we have access to. I mean, the resources that are so Nebraska specific. I mean, I think that ultimately that's a great place to kind of begin a lot of that general process of understanding what goes into it. And then as you kind of move through that process, it becomes accessing resources at schools, right? Where it's actually doing a campus visit. It could be understanding that, I mean, like, so in LPS, for example, we have focus programs. So kids can choose to actually attend a school, like a magnet school could be kind of like a similar kind of concept where they're actually getting to do, in some cases, college classes as high school students in that area, to really get a clear concept. Is this for me? So I think, as kids have those opportunities, both kind of starting at the macro with understanding things generally, but then kind of whittling things down to more specific institutions and working with admissions representatives, is the process.
And I would just add that I encourage my students to get onto the campus, on maybe a junior visit day, or if there's a career focus event on a particular campus, go see the health sciences on Health Sciences Day. And I find that can really excite them and help solidify some of their choices in terms of where they may want to go or what they may want to study.
I've heard both of you mention campus visits several times. So I'm getting the strong impression you think that's a really important thing to do. So can you expand on that? How important would you say a campus visit is if you're talking to a junior or senior in high school? And how many schools would you recommend that they visit?
I don't know that you necessarily can put a number on how many, but I definitely feel like I feel like there's no substitute for a campus visit. And I just think of students that I've known through the years who were set, I'm going to this particular college. They just knew that, even though they'd never never done an official visit. And then they go visit some other places and their eyes are open. Like, oh my goodness, I didn't know that this would be so great somewhere else, And I just emphasize to my students that you have to get on campus to get a feel for what it is, and never go on a Friday.
Right.
Oh, why is that?
They're too empty on Fridays.
Okay.
Which absolutely, right. So and that's like campus visits. I think obviously campus visits is a great thing, but campus visits when school is in session, as opposed to right over like a spring break or a summer session. I mean, then that's optimal. I usually, some of my kind of like talking points I would say with campus visits, if you are having a hard time having a feeling, I think a campus visit is a really good way to make yourself have a feeling. You're going to react to the experience of being there, even if it's that the food was gross or that the walks were long. I think it's one of those things to really, I mean, so much, I think we talk about college, kids are talking about college in elementary school. Maybe they've been on campus, maybe they've seen a football game, maybe they've been there for a play or for a production. But I think going to a campus, seeing yourself there and understanding it in relationship to your opportunity, I think is the thing that really empowers kids. And I think especially when kids who maybe don't have that connection or haven't made that clear sort of goal, I'm going to college, this is what I'm going to do. I think sometimes there's nothing like having a campus visit experience, I don't think, to make kids feel empowered, to make kids feel, to believe and to want to work harder in the work that they're doing. I've read studies about that even acknowledge that. So, I mean, I tell kids, if you want to go far, far away and you're not going to visit first, then that to me always seems dangerous. I tell kids to try schools based on the size of school they're interested in. Try a small school, try a big school. Use what you have in your community just to give yourself a concept of what options are, so that you have things to compare, so that you have some better understanding of what differentiates one college from another. So, I mean, a few would be wonderful, I would say, for your average kid, but you could also find somebody who finds the perfect program at SCC Milford, and bada boom, bada bing, and that's all they need to do. So really, I think that's an individual student situation, but it's a wonderful option for anybody.
And I kind of feel like when they get to the right one, they know it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is so cool.
Yeah,
love it.
It is.
I can speak from experience from taking my own children on college visits, and that's exactly what happened. We did exactly what you suggested, Anders. We looked locally, we looked a couple hours away, small school, large school, and it was pretty evident to them after we did all of the campus visits what was the best fit. So totally can say from personal experience, great advice.
Well, so I always joke.
Oh, sorry.
Let's say I always joke too about like the amount of time I spend like researching the trash can I'm going to buy, right? Like which is, a couple $100 if it's a fancy one. How are you not going to research a college you're going to drop? I mean, many thousands of dollars and spend years of your life there. So that in-person research, I think, is just being a good consumer and being smarter about what it is you're getting into.
Excellent. Okay, let's change gears a little bit. As a junior, students in Nebraska need to take the ACT. Some will also take the SAT. So what do you say to students about that? What advice do you give them? What do you tell them to do to prepare? And how are those scores used? Who wants to take that one first?
I'm happy to. So ours is just coming up here early April. I guess everybody's would be early April, right? So we love that students now, instead of having testing that really just only serves the state of Nebraska, now it gives them an ACT score, which still, and we'll see kind of what happens as we kind of come further away from COVID, as many schools have either gone test optional and not required ACT, or just gotten rid of it altogether. But with that junior test, I really encourage kids. We have kids take a pre-ACT as sophomores. I really encourage kids to work from that pre-ACT. We go through their actual answer key. They actually have the original handbook, and so we can kind of go through and look at the stuff they missed and kind of isolate areas maybe that they could focus. With the junior test, though, for a lot of kids, I mean, I encourage them to just kind of go in and take the test. It's a free test. The ACT, you can take it it's some ridiculous number of times you can take it before they stop you. And so ultimately your best score is the score that colleges will use, provided you have it by, December, February or so of your senior year. So I usually encourage kids to think of it as a big old crossword puzzle, not that you don't take it seriously, but also that you don't give it so much power that the anxiety sort of is what ends up kind of driving your performance, as compared to you treating that as another assignment to kind of see what kind of feedback you get.
And we actually gave our ACT yesterday.
Oh, right on.
So that's behind us. But I would just encourage kids, regardless of what their college path is, to always try their best, because even community colleges will use the ACT scores to determine whether they're ready for college level material. And we want to use that ACT as a way to prove that they're ready for that. So they're not having to pay money for foundations courses where they're not getting any credit.
Yeah.
So we promote, preparation. We do on to college ACT prep with our juniors, and make it, it's available to seniors too that might want to brush up on skills if they want to take it again in the senior year. But I think if they're really serious about college, they don't wait for the state test to be their first ACT. I think they should take the December one as a junior and then take the state one in March or April, and then, see where they are. And if there's an area that they need to brush up on, focus on for a particular program, or to try to bump their composite or something like that, they have time to do that before some of those early program deadlines in the fall when they're seniors.
Great. And I know, Anders, you had mentioned that some of our colleges now are test optional, that they don't require an ACT or SAT score for college admission. But I do know that there are still a lot of scholarship donors that are looking at those scores. And it could mean the difference between getting a nice thousands of dollars scholarship or not. Mm-hmm. So it is still an important thing.
Absolutely.
Okay, I also heard you talk earlier about AP, dual credit. Let's go there. Can you talk to me? What do we mean? What is dual credit? What is AP? And why should high school students consider taking those classes?
I'll go first. So AP, advanced placement classes through the College Board, are classes that, there's a curriculum that's set by the College Board, and high schools will offer certain classes kind of based on staffing that they have, et cetera. So we'll have classes that are AP classes where kids take the class. They take about $100 test at the end of the school year, and then based on the score they receive, typically a 3, 4, or 5, depending upon the subject area, that counts then as college credit. We also have dual credit classes. So these are classes that in some cases are still AP language. It's still like an AP class, but instead of taking that AP test at the end of the class, kids can just take the class. They pay a college, typically about half as much as they would pay were they a student, a college student there, and then they're able to take it at a discount. Typically a C plus or better then counts for college credit, and there's no additional testing beyond just what is required in the class itself. So the teacher is a Southwest teacher. They're at a Southwest school. It's just that they're earning college credit both in high school and through a local community college or four-year college typically.
Great. Do you have a lot of students at your schools that take advantage of that? And do you encourage it?
We have quite a few students that have taken advantage of dual credit. Not as many with AP because we haven't had the coursework for that in our school, but would be something that we would definitely be looking at if we had the personnel to that were interested in it.
Yeah, I think in both those cases, right, like teachers have to have certain degrees often. The teacher teaches the class has to be able to meet criteria to be able to offer the class as dual credit. So obviously that could depend upon your staffing. I would say at our school, the joke, but the way that we say it is that freshman year is hard, sophomore year is harder, junior year is crazy, and then seniors want to be lazy. And part of that is that we're a block school, so kids can complete 240 of their 245 credits through their junior year without extra classes, without summer, without before or after school. So we really are trying to build, the number of students who are taking those classes, not just the kids who always take them and have been taking them since 9th grade, but we're trying to get kids who have expertise or interest in areas. Maybe they're not excellent at English and math, but they're killers at social studies. And so we want them, to challenge themselves in an area that they're more gifted, they're more interested, even if it's just to have the experience of understanding better what it's like to take a higher level class.
That's fantastic. So moving on to actually applying for college. When do students apply to college, and what does that process look like? Julie, do you want to start with that?
Well, I encourage my students that are certain that they're attending college to apply in the early fall of senior year. And so it'll do a few things, open them up to getting scholarship offers if they've applied and been accepted. And if they're in a program, I think of some of the career and technical programs that are quite high demand right now. Some of those programs have waiting lists. And so if somebody thinks they're going to sign up in August to do the John Deere program at Milford, they're going to have a wait, right before, being a freshman in college, where if they do it a year ahead of that, they have a much better chance of getting into that program. So knowing that about my students, I try to assist them to do those things as early as possible.
Anders, how about you? What do you say to your students about when to apply and what to expect from the admissions process?
Right. And I would say that generally, right, kind of depending upon a kiddo, generally speaking, we don't have deadlines unless kids are looking to do programs that are more competitive, or schools that are more competitive that may have like an early action or early decision type deadline. Those can be, November, usually early November, October, even sometimes, I suppose. More typically, though, I think we're looking at kind of like early, part of second semester of the senior year is when deadlines actually hit. That said, we have some great stuff that happens in the state. So our apply to college date, Education Quest has always been really awesome at just kind of like making things like that more accessible, providing a lot of cool resources to make those really neat things. So we have our Apply to College Week is a big time to get kids doing it. Whenever the university decides to give the application fee away for free, we really push. We try to, get a bunch of kind of sessions in for kids to come in and get their applications completed when it's free. But to me, as early as August, but it's just, I want to have it done before Thanksgiving is kind of what I tell kids. If you're done by Thanksgiving, pretty good shot. You've met everybody's deadlines and you're just waiting kind of for that next step.
Well, and something that impacts us that doesn't impact you, Anders, is the RHOP program.
Oh, sure. You bet.
And the KHOP
Absolutely.
program.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the earliest deadline
I bet
that I encounter with my seniors that are wanting to apply to that. So for them, it's essential that they get busy early so they have the ducks in a row.
Mm-hmm.
So Julie, tell us what RHOP stands for.
The Rural Health Occupations Program, that's aimed at getting students in the health occupations and then coming back to practice in rural and underserved areas. And that's available at the 3 state colleges. And then UNK's program is called the KHOP. But they have to be in a rural area in order to apply for that.
All right, very good. So what advice do you give to your students that will help them select the college that's the best fit for them? And I know that sometimes this might be in the spring of their senior year. It might not be for an actual junior. But what do you say to them to help them connect the dots and find the best school for them? Julie, do you want to start?
Well, I think, again, you're looking at several factors, but that campus visit is essential in helping make that decision. And then the programming. If the student wants to major in a particular field, but this college does not offer that, how do you get there? How do you get to your ultimate goal? And so I don't know that there's a magic pat answer, but the college visit will help solidify that in my mind a lot.
Great.
Yeah, and I would say, I think of like 5 factors. As I say that, location, control, right? Public or private, size, career preparation. So maybe that's looking at a school that has a higher rate of students who complete a pre-program and then get in, to the first 2 choices they would have for a professional program. I think, the campus visit's a crucial part of that. I think for a lot of kids, the financial aid's a big part of it too, for families too. So we get the application in, we find out yes, no, we usually find out about a scholarship that's connected to the application itself, and then it's FAFSA time and finding out what funds can be. So I know that I have kids who are just waiting for the financial aid package to decide, what ultimately they feel like is their best move, or they're waiting to hear from the Buffett scholarship. And, because if the Buffett comes through, then that means they're going to, go with plan A versus maybe plan B. It's obviously an individual thing, but I think those can be some of the things maybe that can kind of come into play and help kids make their minds up, or are big determining factors in how they do decide to go.
Yeah, it sounds like there's just a lot of things to consider. So there's no magic bullet, but it's good to hear when you talk about those 5 factors. And Julie, when you talk about the importance of being on campus, there's a lot that goes into it. So Andrews, you just mentioned financial aid, and I know college costs are a major concern for most families, and we're not going to dig deep into that today. But what advice would you give students so that they are positioned in a good position to earn scholarships?
Yeah, and that to me is like I talk to kids about being more scholarshipable. And so that generally, yeah, it's not right, but like we know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
It to me is really, it's about a lot of the stuff that's also like career development. So if you're joining clubs or you're doing a part-time job that's related to a career interest, that's going to dovetail really nicely into scholarship opportunities that are looking for kids who really are demonstrating in their high school careers, a concerted interest in health sciences, say. I think that it's getting involved. I think that it's doing the best that you can with grades. I think it's also understanding that you don't just get scholarships because you have a 4.0 and a 36 ACT. Some of the best scholarships are looking at kids who have the most financial need, and really have lower requirements in terms of like a GPA. The Buffett's like a 2.0, right? So that's the best scholarship, I would argue, in the state, and is meant to be very accessible. So don't assume scholarships aren't for you because you're not the best athlete or the top student in school.
Well, and I think with the emphasis too on some of the high demand career technical fields right now, at least for some of my students, that's where some of the larger sums of money are available for them, in the ones entering the 2-year programs.
All right, very good. Well, Anders and Julie, great advice that you've given. Thank you. So let's take a look at what questions that we have from our audience. So first up, so when looking at college admissions, is the GPA more important now than the ACT score? How would you answer that?
I would say that the way that we've often heard it, especially from schools that have gone test optional, is they'll encourage a student to provide both. And in most cases, they'll use the thing that is the best, right? So like if their GPA is higher than their ACT score, then the GPA is what they're going to use, and the ACT is not going to negatively impact them necessarily. I've always thought, GPA, your GPA is you arrive to your GPA in a more similar way. College is not about a test that you take one day for 3.5 hours and you do great or you don't. So I've always argued, I think GPA is a better indicator. GPA also can indicate how much kids are taking weighted classes and therefore taking more difficult classes. So putting themselves, in more difficult situations to find more challenges, so they're better prepared. A lot of that to me is GPA is ultimately something that is a years long process. Do you study? Do you do you get a good night's sleep? Whereas I would argue with ACT, a person can be a great test taker. A person can spend a whole lot of money on being really good at taking tests. So both are important. I would always argue GPA, but colleges love high ACT scores too. So the better they are, the higher they are, the fewer people can tell you no.
Great. How about you, Julie?
I would agree wholeheartedly with everything he said.
Okay. Excellent. All right, here's another question. What advice do you give students about taking a gap year?
What do you think, Julie? Do you get gap year, kiddos?
Well, so quite honestly, I'm going to say I'm not really in favor of a gap year, because I feel like most students that take one with the idea that they're going to earn money and then go to college, they get very used to having that income. And then they're going to go to college, and all of a sudden, the lifestyle change is a rude awakening. And so the only exception I would say to that would be perhaps a student that made a decision to be a part of like an exchange program after graduating senior year, and they go to another country to experience that with the intention that they're coming back to college after their year abroad. And I just don't feel like a true gap year really serves the student in the way that they think it's going to.
Yeah, I would say the first thing that you described is less of a gap year and more just kicking the can down the road, right? Where it's like, yeah, I'm not going to make a decision. I'm going to save money for college. And it's always like, okay, well, how much does college cost? How much do you make an hour? Are we
and
really
how much can you actually save?
Right. And so I think that I usually will challenge kids who kind of have that as their plan. I think a true gap year to me would include things like an abroad experience, like an internship, volunteering, travel. It really, I mean, gap years are things that I mean, you can pay somebody to coordinate for you. So a true gap year to me, I think of as more as kind of a fact-finding mission where you're kind of trying to maybe hone your ideas around things, or just get kind of a clear indication of what's out there in the world for you. If that's what kids are looking at, I still encourage kids to apply and then defer. So you apply, you're admitted, then you defer. And when you defer and do your gap year, then you're still eligible for freshman scholarships. So oftentimes that can kind of put you in the position of still being considered a high school senior as you applied, which usually has more opportunity for money and stuff like that.
All right. And a final question from our audience. Should a student take the ACT or SAT? Who wants to take that one?
Well, the majority of my students in central Nebraska should take the ACT. If they're looking to go to an Ivy League school, that a prestigious admissions selective type school, then maybe an SAT, but I really haven't had one take an SAT for quite a few years.
Yeah, and where I would say in Lincoln, we offer ACT at all the public high schools, where the SAT is only offered at one. I will say that I've had kids who took an ACT 3-4 times and just felt like they were banging their heads against the wall, getting a score that wasn't representative of what I would argue their ability level was. And so I've had a couple of kids do the SAT then, and sometimes that's a better experience. It's a different kind of test. It's not content knowledge as much as it's problem solving. So in some cases, I mean, if it's available, again, I don't think as we move closer and closer to like online options for the standardized tests, then maybe that changes. But I think ACT is, it's more of a geographic thing, I think, often. So I would say ACT, but SAT can be, it's a different kind of test. So I think for some people, it's worth doing some research into both. Trying them both. You're out $120 or something, maybe. Hopefully, if you get free reduced, you've got access to waivers. So, if you're thinking of it as more of just an experiential thing to try and see how it goes, I would always encourage experiencing different things. But if I'm picking between the two, I'm an ACT guy.
All right, great. Okay, thank you everyone for the great questions. And before we get to our prize drawing, I invite our audience to follow Education Quest on social, sign up for our Countdown to College emails so you can stay up to date on all things college planning. So we will put a link in the comments so that you can easily sign up for Countdown to College. Okay, and now the winner of the Education Quest thermal mug or water bottle is Beth Kavanaugh. So congratulations, Beth. And we'll reach out to you via email to get your mailing address so we can get that to you right away. So thanks, everyone. Thanks, Julie and Anders. Thank you. And we hope to see our viewers right back here April 19th for My Life as a Student Athlete. So thanks for joining us and have a great night.